Hello everyone and welcome back to the Art of Creation show. I'm your host Rebecca Boswell and coach and storyteller today. For those of you who have been following along with season 7, you will know that we are on episode 6. Hi everybody. Hi. Great to have you live. Hi Debbie. So we are on episode number 6 and hi. We're on episode number 6 in this series, and we're doing this read-along of The Untethered Soul, The Journey Beyond Yourself. It's a book by Michael Singer. I show it to you every week, and every week you can't really see the cover, but you can check it out by the title. And so we have read up through part 3, and today we are going to delve into part 4. So today's part 4 is entitled Going Beyond, and the chapters are Taking Down the Walls, Far, Far Beyond, and Letting Go of False Solidity. And I'm going to read the entire part 4 today. So for those of you who are, yay! So if you're listening along as you're going about your day, awesome. Glad to have you here with us live. And for those of you who are watching the replay, awesome. The replays are awesome because you get to listen to them as many times as you like. And if you have been following along, great. This will be posted onto YouTube after. And for those who are watching for the first time, you can catch up on the previous episodes and the previous chapters of the book by going to the Art of Creation show YouTube channel. So please make sure to click the notification bell on Facebook and click the subscribe button on YouTube, and then that way you'll know when new videos get uploaded to YouTube. And since our recording times are not always the same via Facebook Live, if you have the notification bell on, then you will know when we're live if you want to pop on and contribute to the energy of the reading. So without further ado, we are going to launch into part 4 of The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. So here we go. Going Beyond. Buckle up. Ready for takeoff. Chapter 12, Taking Down the Walls. At some point in your growth, it starts to become quieter inside. This happens quite naturally as you take a deep breath and a deep seat within yourself. You then come to realize that though you have always been in there, you have been completely overwhelmed by the constant barrage of thoughts, emotions, and sensory inputs that draw on your consciousness. As you see this, it begins to dawn on you that you might actually be able to go beyond all of these disturbances. The more you sit in the seat of witness consciousness, the more you realize that since you are completely independent of what you are watching, there must be a way to break free of the magical hold that the psyche has on your awareness. There must be a way out. And for those of you who are coming to this episode as your first episode, there is a bunch about this in the first 2 chapters of the book, so the first 2 episodes, so I definitely recommend you going back and having a listen. This inner breakthrough to complete freedom is traditionally depicted by the overused and generally misunderstood term of enlightenment. The problem is that our views of enlightenment are either based upon our personal experiences or upon our limited conceptual understanding. Since most people have never had experiences in this realm, the state of enlightenment is either scoffed at completely or viewed as the ultimate mystical state accessible to almost no one. It's safe to say that the only thing most people know for sure about enlightenment is that they are not there. However, with the understanding that thoughts, emotions, and sensory objects are simply passing before your consciousness, it becomes reasonable to question whether your sense of awareness need be limited to this experience. What if consciousness were to remove its focus from your personal set of thoughts, your personal set of emotions, and your limited sensory input? Would you become untethered from the bonds of the personal self and be set free to explore beyond? And how exactly did consciousness become bound to the personal self to begin with? The problem with even attempting to consider these questions is that they call for a discussion of what exists beyond the confines of the mind. obviously that discussion is very difficult to have from within the mental structure we are accustomed to using. For this reason, we will begin exploring the untethered state through the use of an allegory. Much like Plato used dialogue to tell his allegory of the cave in 360 BC, we will use a short story to tell our allegory of a very special house. Imagine that you found yourself in the midst of an open field where the sun was always shining. It was beautiful, and it was a beautiful place of great light and great openness. It was so beautiful that you decided you wanted to live there. So you bought the land, and right in the middle of the enormous field, you began personally designing and building the house of your dreams. You put down a solid foundation because you wanted the house to be very strong and to last a long time. You built the house out of concrete blocks so that you wouldn't have any problems with decaying or leaking. To make the house ecologically sound, you decided to put in very few windows and to build a roof with lots of overhang. After you put in the windows and the house was complete, you realized that a lot of heat still came in. So you installed high-quality protective shutters that not only reflected sunlight and heat back to the outside, but also could be locked down for security purposes. It was a very large house that could store enough supplies to allow for complete self-sufficiency. You even built separate quarters for a quiet acquaintance who would keep the house clean and leave you to be in solitude. And solitude it would be, since your romantic quest included a commitment to no phones, radios, televisions, or internet connections. Your house was finally finished, and you were very excited to be living out there. You loved the openness of the field and all the light and the beauty of nature. But most of all, you were enamored with the house. You had put your heart and soul into every aspect of the design, and it showed. It was truly you. In fact, over time, between your infatuation with the house and your growing discomfort with all the strange sights and sounds outside, you started spending more time indoors. It was then that you realized that with the shutters and doors fully locked down, the house actually began to feel like a fortress. And this was just fine with you. Being a city person, it was pretty scary living so far out of touch in total isolation, but you were committed to making it on your own. So you gradually became accustomed to living safely within the confines of the house. You happily went about your business of reading and writing as you had always longed to do. It was actually quite comfortable in there since it was fully climate controlled and you had been wise enough to install a modern full spectrum lighting system. Ironically, you found your house so comfortable, enjoyable, and safe that you stopped thinking about the outside altogether. After all, the inside was familiar, predictable, and within the realm of your control. The outside was unknown, unpredictable, and completely out of your control. Your sense of inner sanctum was supported by the fact that when the shutters and blinds were blocked in place, they blended like paintings on the walls, and you never even considered risking going outside to unlock them. They were so well made that when the lights were turned off, it was absolutely pitch black, day or night. But since you were accustomed to never turning off the lights, you didn't notice this until they started burning out. It was only then that you realized your predicament. No one had left you replacement bulbs compatible with the new system. This meant that once the final lights failed, you were left to find your way around the house in absolute darkness. From that point forward, the only light you had came from the few candles you kept for emergencies, but there were very few of these, so you conserved them well. Being a person who loved light, this was very difficult for you, yet it was not difficult enough to force you to overcome the fears you had developed about leaving the safety of your house. Eventually, the stress of living in this darkness took its toll on your health, both physically and mentally. With time, the very memory of the beautiful sunlit field began to fade from your mind, never to return again. So I am reading from The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, A Journey Beyond Yourself. And welcome. I'm glad you're here listening. And we are on chapter 12. Okay. So, where was I? From this point forward, the only light you had came from the few candles you kept for emergencies, but there were very few of these, so you conserved them well. With time, the very memory of the beautiful sunlit field began to fade from your mind, never to return again. You became very concerned about keeping the house lit. The only light you knew about was the light you created in the darkness. You're welcome. With your precious candles. It became pretty lonely in there. You were cut off from everything, and the only comfort you felt was the sense of protection your house afforded you. You were no longer aware of exactly what you were afraid of. You were just aware of always being scared and uncomfortable. It was all you could do just to try to hold yourself together. You even stopped reading and writing because of the lack of light. It was dark, and you were falling into darkness. Then one day, the housekeeper, who shared your overwhelming need to stay in the safety of the house, called you down to the storage cellar. You were amazed by what you saw. A full supply of emergency flashlights had been found there that could be powered simply by shaking them. Your housekeeper had already set some up, and the cellar was fully radiant. This was a true turning point in your life. You set about your business of trying to create light, beauty, and happiness within the confines of your house. You decorated each room and worked together to keep the light shining brightly until you went to sleep. You started reading and writing again, and it turned out that your housemate loved reading your writings. In fact, it was not just the artificial lights that were lighting the house. The ember of love had begun to glow in both of your hearts. Imagine the light you could create together instead of apart. You began spending all of your time with each other, and you even staged a marriage ceremony. It was so beautiful as you vowed to take each other and bring love and light into your house and home. Compared to the darkness in which you had been living, this was heaven. One day you came across a book in your library. It interested you because it talked about the natural, radiant light that existed outside. It even spoke of bathing in that light. But it was talking about more light than you could ever imagine without anyone having to do anything to create it. This was confusing to you. After all, the only light you knew about was the artificial light from candles and flashlights. How could you make that much light and keep it going? You didn't have a clue what this book was talking about because you could only view things in relation to the way you were living now. You were living inside the house, and therefore you were living inside of darkness. All the light that you could experience was limited to what you could create within the house. You had lived there for so long that all your hopes, dreams, philosophies, and beliefs were founded upon being inside that dark house. Your whole world was about keeping together the life you had managed to build for yourself within the confines of that house. When you continued reading this seemingly mystical book, it spoke of what it was like to actually walk around in this natural light. It seemed to be describing a self-luminous, omnipresent light that shines everywhere all at once. It was a light that falls on everything constantly and evenly. Though you had no frame of reference for understanding this, it touched something deep inside of you. The book then discussed actually going outside. That is, going beyond the walls of the world you have created for yourself. In fact, it said that while you are attached and enamored with the world you created to avoid darkness, you will never know the abundance of natural light that is beyond the confines of your house. How will you ever go outside when you are so dependent upon what you have built inside? The analogy of life inside this house is a perfect fit for our predicament. Our consciousness, our awareness of being, is living deep inside of us in an artificially sealed off area that is absolute. It has 4 walls, a floor, and a roof. It is so solid that no one ray of natural light comes in. The only light we get is what we manage to create for ourselves. If we don't create good situations for ourselves, there is darkness. So we are very busy decorating daily. We do this by trying to bring things in there with us, hoping to create at least a little light in the house of our own making, where we have sealed ourselves off. This is the visual. You are inside a house, totally sealed off from natural light, and the house is sitting in the middle of an open field full of brilliant light. But what is your house made of? What are your walls made of? How can they seal off all that light and keep you locked inside? Your house is made of your thoughts and your emotions. Hi. Thanks for joining us. We are reading from The Untethered Soul, A Journey Beyond Yourself by Michael Singer, and we are on chapter 12. The walls are made of your psyche. That's what that house is. It is all your past experiences, all your thoughts and emotions, all the concepts, the views, the opinions, the beliefs, the hopes and dreams that you have collected around yourself. You hold them in place on all sides, including above and below you. You have pulled together in your mind a specific set of thoughts and emotions, and then you have woven them together into a conceptual world in which you live. This mental structure completely blocks you from whatever natural light is on the outside of the walls. You have walls of thoughts thick enough and closed enough to where nothing but darkness is inside that structure. You are so entranced into paying attention to your thoughts and emotions that you never go beyond the borders that they create. If you want to see how restrictive your walls are, just start walking toward them. Let's say you have an emotional fear of heights. When you were young, you fell off a ladder and the impression stayed with you. That is one of your walls. If you doubt that it's a wall, let's see you walk through it. Let's say something happens that activates these old feelings of fear and you decide to walk right toward it. The closer you get, the more you will have the urge to pull back. That which you collected from your past forms a boundary that you intuitively want to avoid. That's natural. That's what we do with walls. We avoid running into them. But because you avoid running into them, they lock you inside their perimeter. They become your prison because they are the boundaries of your awareness. Because you are not willing to approach them, you cannot see what is beyond them. When you approach the barriers of your thoughts and emotions, it feels like going into an abyss. You don't want to go near that place, but you can go there. And if you want to get out, you will go there. Eventually, you will realize that darkness is not what's really there. What is really there are the walls that are blocking the infinite light. When you're looking for light, that is a crucial distinction. If you see a wall and it's protecting you from unending darkness, you will not want to go there. But if you see a wall that is blocking the light, you will want to go there in order to remove the wall. It is often said that you must go through the darker night and the darkest night in order to get to the infinite light. This is because what we call darkness is really the blockage of light. You must go past these walls, right? Those places that we'd rather not go, that we don't want to look at, we don't want to acknowledge. And sometimes just even looking at them, we realize it's not as bad as we thought, and we can release and let go of whatever we've been holding on to or avoiding so that we can move forward. It's not really difficult to get past the walls. Time and again, every day, the natural flow of life collides with our walls and tries to tear them down. But time and again, we defend them. You must realize that when you defend yourself, you are really defending your walls. There's nothing else to defend in there. There is just your awareness of being and the limited house you built to live in. What you are defending is the house you built to protect yourself. You are hiding inside. So basically, you're just defending for and against your fears and everything that would create disturbance and change, so that you can stay where you're relatively safe here, as opposed to actually having all of the magic and the abundance and the joy and everything that's on the other side of fear. So if something happens to challenge the walls of your psyche, you get highly defensive. You have built a self-concept, moved inside, and now you defend that home with all you have. But what creates that inner home other than the walls of your thoughts? When you say, I'm a woman and I'm 45 years old, I'm married to Joe and I graduated from this school, those are thoughts. The actual situations don't exist in there with you except in the form of thoughts that you cling to. But I was a cheerleader and I was president of my senior class. That was 30 years ago. Those situations don't create anymore or exist, but they exist inside of you and they form the walls in which you live. What if somebody challenges your self-concept and breaks a little hole in it? What if somebody manages to shake out of those foundational thoughts that the house of your psyche is built upon? Imagine if someone told you when you were 20 years old, wait a minute, those are not your parents. You were adopted. Didn't they ever tell you? You would adamantly deny it until they showed you the documents. It would shake up your whole inner being. Just one wrong thought and the structure starts to crumble. Tremendous fear and turmoil can open inside of you simply because something is not the way you thought it was. It shakes you to the core of your being because it challenges the house of thoughts in which you are dwelling. To fix this, you start in with your rationalizations. I knew they were really nice. They were just like my real parents would have been. Imagine them adopting someone like me and bringing me up just like their own. God, they were even more special than I thought they were. You patch that hole up very well. That's what we do with our walls. We keep them solid. Nothing is allowed to shake those walls. Notice that you patched the cracking wall with thoughts. You patched with thoughts that which is made of thoughts. That's what we do. Just like the people who fearfully lock themselves into the dark house in the middle of a sunlit field and then struggle to create some light. We work hard to build a world within the confines of our inner walls that is better than the inner darkness. We decorate our walls with the memories of our past experiences and with our dreams of the future. In other words, we decorate them with thoughts. But just as the people in the house had the potential to step out of their own self-made artificial world into the beauty of the natural light, you can step outside your house of thoughts into the unlimited. Your awareness can expand to encompass vast space instead of the limited space in which you dwell. Then, when you look back at that little house you built, you will wonder why you were ever in there. That is your journey out. True freedom is very close. It's just on the other side of your walls. Enlightenment is a very special thing, but in truth, one should not focus on it. Focus instead on the walls of your own making that are blocking the light. Of what purpose it is to build walls that block the light and then strive for enlightenment. You can get out simply by letting everyday life take down the walls you hold around yourself. You simply don't participate in supporting, maintaining, and defending your fortress. Imagine your house of thoughts standing in the middle of an ocean of light from 1 trillion stars. Imagine your awareness trapped inside the darkness of that house, struggling daily to live off the artificial light of your limited experiences. Now imagine the walls crumbling down and the effortless release of consciousness expanding into the brilliance of what is and always was. Now give that experience a name, and it would be enlightenment. So I'm going to keep reading let's see. I have an hour blocked off, so I'm gonna keep reading. For those of you who want to stick around, thank you. And otherwise, you can always catch the replay on YouTube later. So next, we're going to chapter 13, Far, Far Beyond. To infinity and beyond. Could have also been title of this chapter. Okay, Buzz, let's go. Ultimately, the word beyond captures the true meaning of spirituality. In its most basic sense, going beyond means going past where you are. It means not staying in your current state. When you constantly go beyond yourself, there are no limitations. There are no more boundaries. Limitations and boundaries only exist at the places where you stop going beyond. If you never stop, then you go beyond boundaries, beyond limitations, beyond the sense of a restricted self. Beyond is infinite in all directions. If you take a laser beam and aim it in any direction, it will go on for infinity. It would only cease to be infinite if you created an artificial boundary that it could not penetrate. Boundaries create the appearance of finiteness in infinite space. Things seem infinite or things seem finite because your perception hits mental boundaries. In truth, everything is infinite. It is you who takes that which goes on forever and talks about a mile from here. What is a mile from here? It's nothing but a piece of infinity. There are no limits. There is just the infinite universe. To go beyond, you must keep going past the limits that you put on things. This requires changes at the core of your being. Right now, you are using your analytical mind to break the world up into individual thoughts and objects. You are then using the same mind to put these discrete thoughts together in a defined relationship to each other. You do this in an attempt to feel a semblance of control. This is seen most clearly in your constant attempt to make the unknown known. You say to yourself, "It wouldn't dare rain tomorrow, it's my day off. And since Jennifer loves being outdoors, she will certainly want to go hiking with me. In fact, if I want an extra day off, Tom won't mind covering for me. After all, I covered for him once." You have it all figured out. You know how everything is supposed to be, even in the future. Your views, your opinions, your preferences, your concepts, your goals, and your beliefs are all ways of bringing the infinite universe down to the finite where you can feel a sense of control. Since the analytical mind cannot handle the infinite, you create an alternative reality of finite thoughts that can remain fixed within your mind. You have taken the whole, broken it into pieces, and selected a handful of these pieces to be put together in a certain way within your mind. This mental model has become your reality. You must now struggle day and night to make the world fit your model, and you label everything that doesn't fit as wrong, bad, or unfair. If anything happens that challenges how you view things, you fight, you defend, you rationalize, you get frustrated and angry over simple little things. This is the result of being unable to fit what's actually happening into your model of reality. If you want to go beyond your model, you have to take the risk of not believing in it. If your mental model is bothering you, it's because it doesn't incorporate reality. Your choice is to either resist reality or go beyond the limits of your model, right? What's actually going on, as opposed to what you'd like it to be or what you'd like to see going on. It gives us more choice and more possibility for actually working with it, playing with it, and creating something that is going to work, as opposed to continuously trying to make it something that it isn't. And believe me, oh my gosh, what a practice. I would love to tell you that I have this 100% right. But it is cool. The more we play with it, the more ease that we can have. So it's a worthy practice, at least in my opinion. In order to truly go beyond your model, you must first understand why you built it. The easiest way to understand this is to study what happens when the model doesn't work. Have you ever built your whole world on a model of life predicted upon another person's behavior or the permanence of a relationship? If so, have you ever had that foundation pulled out from under you? Somebody leaves you, somebody dies, something goes wrong, something shakes your model to the core. When this happens, your entire view of who you believe you are, including your relationship to everyone and everything around you, begins to fall apart. You panic and do everything you can to hold it together. You beg, fight, and struggle to try to keep your world from collapsing. Once you've had an experience like that, and most people have, you realize that the model you've built is tenuous at best. The entire thing can fall apart at any moment. The whole model and all that it's built upon, including your entire view of yourself and everything else, can start to crumble. What you experience when this happens is one of the most important learning experiences of your life. You come face to face with what made you build the model. The level of discomfort and disorientation you experience is frightening. You struggle just to get back some semblance of normal perception. What you are really doing is trying to pull the mental model back around you so that you can settle down into your familiar mental setting. But our whole world doesn't have to fall apart in order for us to see what we're doing in there. We are constantly trying to hold it all together. If you really want to see why you do things, then don't do them and see what happens. Let's say you're a smoker and you decide to stop smoking. You quickly confront the urges that cause you to smoke. These urges are the reason you smoke. They are the outermost layer of cause. If you can sit through these urges, you will see what caused them. If you can get comfortable with what you see, you will face the next layer of causation, and so on, layer upon layer. Likewise, there's a reason you overeat. There's a reason why you dress the way you do. There's a reason for everything you do. If you want to see why you care so much about what you wear and what your hair is like, then just don't do it one day. Wake up in the morning and go somewhere disheveled with your hair a mess and see what happens to the energies inside of you. See what happens to you when you don't do the things that make you comfortable. What you'll see is why you're doing them. And that gives us more choice. You are constantly trying to stay within your comfort zone. You struggle to keep people, places, and things in a manner that supports your model. And I get this is uncomfortable sometimes even just to think about or hear about, let alone actually engage in some of the experiments that would allow you to really see this. But I just want you to really walls down, barriers down, and just receive this. And I wonder what shows up. You are constantly trying to stay within your comfort zone. You struggle to keep people, places, and things in a manner that support your model. If they start to go any other way, you get uncomfortable. Your mind then becomes active, telling you how to get things back the way you need them to be. The moment somebody starts behaving in a way that is outside your expectations, your mind starts talking. It says, what should I do about this? I can't just ignore what he did. I could confront him directly or ask someone else to talk to him. And your mind is telling you to fix it. And it doesn't really matter what you end up doing. It's all about getting back within your comfort zone. This zone is finite. All attempts to stay within it become finite and keep you there. Going beyond always means letting go of the effort to keep things within your defined limits. So there are two ways you can live. You can devote your life to staying in your comfort zone, or you can work on your freedom. In other words, you can devote your whole life to the process of making sure everything fits within your limited model, or you can devote your life to freeing yourself from the limits of that model. To understand this better, let's take a trip to the zoo. Imagine that you're having a great time until you see a tiger inside a small cage. This causes you to contemplate what it would be like to live the rest of your life in such tight confinement. The very thought is extremely frightening to you, but in truth, the confines of your comfort zone create just such a cage. This inner cage doesn't limit your body, it limits the expanse of your consciousness. Because you are unable to go outside your comfort zone, you are, in essence, locked in confinement. If you examine this, you will see that you're willing to stay in this cage because you're afraid. Your comfort zone is familiar to you. Beyond it, it is the unknown. To fully appreciate this, just imagine the most paranoid person you have ever met in your entire life. He or she is so scared. Every moment of his or her life, they think somebody's trying to hurt them. If you offer him or her that tiger's cage, he or she might accept your offer. He doesn't see it as being locked in a cage. He or she sees it as a protection from what could harm them. That which looks like prison to you looks like safety to them. What if a security service came to your house and blocked down and bolted down all the doors and barred all the windows? If you happened to be inside at the time, would you panic and want to get out? Or would you thank them for helping you to feel safe? Most people have the second reaction when it comes to limitations of their psyche. They want to stay in there and feel safe. They don't say, get me out of here. I'm locked in this tiny world in which everything has to be a certain way. I have to worry about what everyone's doing, what I look like, and everything I've ever said. I want out. I feel that way sometimes. Instead of wanting out, they try to keep their cage stable. If something is not comfortable, they do whatever they must to protect themselves and get back to a feeling of safety. If you've ever done that, it means that you love your cage. And I mean, come on, who hasn't? This is one of the conundrums, in my opinion, of the human experience, right? All the power of the universe, itty bitty little living space. For those of you who like the Aladdin movie, I love that reference. But it's so true, right? And yet, it doesn't have to be. So when you truly awake spiritually, you realize that you are caged. You wake up and realize that you can hardly move in there. You're constantly hitting the limits of your comfort zone. You see that you're afraid to tell people what you really think. You see that you're too self-conscious to fully and freely express yourself. You see that you have to stay on top of everything in order to be okay. But why? There's really no reason. You have set these limits on yourself. If you don't stay within them, you get scared, you feel hurt, and you feel threatened. That's your cage. The tiger knows the limits of his cage when he hits the bars. You know the limits of your cage when the psyche starts to resist. Your bars are the outer boundary of your comfort zone. The minute you come to the edge of your cage, it lets you know it in no uncertain terms. Let's look at this edge by way of an example. In the old days, if you wanted to keep your dog in the backyard, you had to put up a fence. Nowadays, you don't need a fence because everything is electronic. You just bury wires underground and put a little collar on the dog. The dog thinks, "Hey, I'm free. I used to have to be inside a fence. This is great." Of course, he goes running right to where he's not supposed to go, and zap! He jumps back and barks. What happened? An invisible limit was there, and when the dog approached that limit, it gave him a little shock. It hurt. It was uncomfortable enough so that now the dog feels fear whenever he approaches the boundaries. So you see, a cage doesn't have to look like a cage. It can be a cage created by your fear of discomfort. If you approach your limits, you begin to feel uncomfortable and insecure. Those are the bars of your cage. As long as you stay inside of it, you cannot possibly know what is on the other side. The boundaries of this cage are what make your world appear finite and temporal, locked in time and space. The infinite and eternal are just outside the limits of your cage. Going beyond means going beyond the borders of that cage. There should be no cage. The soul is infinite. It is free to expand everywhere. It is free to experience all of life. This can only happen when you are willing to face reality without mental borders. If you still have barriers, and you know what they are because you hit them every day, you must be willing to go beyond them. Otherwise, you remain within your cage. And remember, decorating your cage with beautiful experiences, fond memories, and great dreams is not the same as going beyond. A cage by any other name is still a cage. You must be willing to go beyond. Throughout each day, I'm sinking on my chair. I just realized I'm like practically under the under the camera. Okay. So otherwise, you remain within your cage. And remember, decorating your cage with beautiful experiences, fond memories, and great dreams is not the same as going beyond. A cage by any other name is still a cage, and you must be willing to go beyond. Well, you don't have to be willing to go beyond, but you need to be willing to go beyond if you'd like to go beyond, and if you'd like to see what's beyond the fear and beyond the cage. Let's go back to the dog. Since that particular dog was used to roaming free, it's a sad day when he stops trying to get out of the yard. The only reason he would stop trying to go beyond his little space is that he's afraid of the edges. But what if we're dealing with a very brave dog that's determined to be free? Imagine that the dog has not given up. You find him sitting there right at the place where the collar starts vibrating, and he is not backing off. Every minute, he's stepping forward a little bit more in order to get used to the force field. If he continues, he will eventually get out. There's not a chance in the world that he won't. Since it's just an artificial edge, he can get through it if he can learn to withstand the discomfort. He just has to be ready, willing, and able to handle the discomfort. The collar cannot actually hurt him. It's just uncomfortable. If he is willing to go beyond this comfort zone, he is free to come and go at will. Your cage is just like that. When you approach the edges, you feel insecurity, jealousy, fear, or self-consciousness. You pull back, and if you are like most people, you stop trying. Spirituality begins when you decide that you'll never stop trying. And just a reminder that in the, first chapter, we talked about being spiritual and being worldly. And in this context, in this book, what we're using for the word spiritual or spirituality, it just means of finding and drawing from and using the power and light from within, as opposed to looking out in the world to try and find strength and who you are through the outward world and the outward tangible reality. So spirituality is the commitment to go beyond no matter what it takes. It is an infinite journey based upon going beyond yourself every minute of every day for the rest of your life, right? Because you're actually functioning from that seat of consciousness, right? From like the deep being of you, beyond just the mind. So if you're truly going beyond, you're always at your limits. You're never back in the comfort zone. A spiritual being feels as though they are always against that edge and they are constantly being pushed through it. Eventually, you will realize that it cannot actually hurt you to go beyond your psychological limits. If you are willing to just stand at the edges and keep walking, you will go beyond. You used to pull back when it got uncomfortable. Now you relax and go past that point. That is all it takes to go beyond. Go beyond where you were a minute ago by handling what's happening now. Would you like to go beyond? Would you like to feel no edge? Imagine a comfort zone that is so expanded that it can easily fit the entire day, no matter what happens. The day unfolds and the mind doesn't say anything. You simply interact with the day with a peaceful, fully inspired heart. If your edges happen to get hit, the mind doesn't complain. It all just passes through. This is how great beings live. When you are trained, like a great athlete, to immediately relax through your edges when they get hit, then it's all over. You realize that you will always be fine. Nothing can ever bother you except your edges, and now you know what to do with them. You end up loving your edges because they point your way to freedom. All you have to do is constantly relax and lean into them. Then one day, when you least expect it, you fall through into the infinite. And that is what it means to go beyond. And again, that is exactly when we're doing the, I've talked about inner freedom sessions. That's exactly what we're doing, is we're honing in on where some of those edges are, especially in relation to things that you're going through right now or things that you're trying to create or interested in pursuing. And we find those edges and we go through that process to relax and release. And and then play as your edges get expanded. So there are a few more pages for the third chapter in this part 4. And so I'm going to read chapter 14 to close out today. So hopefully you guys can stay who are here live, and otherwise you can catch the replay. Letting go of false solidity. The inside of one's psyche is a very complex, sophisticated place. It is full of conflicting forces that are constantly changing due to both internal and external stimuli. This results in wide variations of needs, fears, and desires over relatively short periods of time. Because of this, very few people have the clarity to understand what's going on in there. There's just too much happening at once to follow the cause and effect relationships between all of our different thoughts, emotions, and energy levels. As a result, we find ourselves struggling just to hold it all together. But everything keeps on changing. Moods, desires, likes, dislikes, enthusiasm, lethargy. It's a full-time task just to maintain the discipline necessary to create even the semblance of control and order in there. Yes, that's right. When we break the chains, right? We go through the wall, when we find those limitations and we move through them. That's right. Freedom! I love it. While it may not seem to you that you're suffering, compared to what it can be, you are suffering. In truth, the very responsibility of having to hold it all together is itself a form of suffering. You notice this most when things start to fall apart outside. Your psyche goes into turmoil and you have to struggle to hold your inner world together. But what exactly are you trying to hold on to? The only things in there are your thoughts, emotions, and movements of energy, none of which are solid. They are like clouds simply coming and going through vast inner space, but you keep holding on to them as though consistency can substitute for stability. The Buddhists have a term for this. It's called clinging. In the end, clinging is what the psyche is all about, right? And then they talk about non-attachment or letting go of attachments to the worldly things, including our thoughts, our feelings, and emotions that cling to everything in the world. In order to understand clinging, we must first understand who clings. As you go deeper into yourself, you will naturally come to realize that there is an aspect of your being that is always there and never changes. This is your sense of awareness, your consciousness. It is this awareness that is aware of your thoughts, aware of your experiences, the ebb and the flow of your emotions, and receives your physical senses. This is the root of self. You are not your thoughts. You are aware of your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You feel your emotions. You are not your body. You look at it in the mirror and experience this world through its eyes and ears. You are the conscious being who is aware that you are aware of all these inner and outer things. If you explore consciousness, which is your pure sense of awareness, you will see that it really does not exist at any particular point in space. Rather, it is a field of awareness that focuses down to a point by concentrating on a particular set of objects. You can be aware of feeling just one finger, or you can be aware of feeling your entire body at once. You can be totally lost in a single thought, or you can be simultaneously aware of your thoughts, your emotions, your body, and your surroundings. Consciousness is a dynamic field of awareness that has the ability to either narrow focus or broadly expand. When consciousness concentrates narrowly enough, it loses its broader sense of self. It no longer experiences itself as a field of pure consciousness. It begins to relate itself more to the objects it's focused upon. As we have seen, this is what happens when you get so absorbed in a movie that you completely lose the broader sense of sitting in a cold, dark theater. In this case, you have shifted from concentrating on your body and its surroundings to concentrating on the world of the movie. You literally get lost in the experience. This can be generalized to your entire experience of life. Your sense of self is determined by where you are focusing your consciousness. But what determines where you focus your consciousness? At the most basic level, it is simply determined by anything that catches your awareness because it stands out from the rest. To understand this, imagine that your consciousness is simply observing vast, empty inner space. Now imagine that passing through this space is the gentle flow of a random thought. Say, thought objects like a cat, a horse, a word, a color, or an abstract thought. They are sporadically floating right through your awareness. Now let one object stand out above the rest. It catches your attention and draws the focus of your awareness. You immediately realize that the more focused you become on the object, the slower it moves, until eventually, if you focus on it enough, it stops. The force of consciousness ends up holding the object stable simply by concentrating on it. Just as a fish can pass through water, but not through ice, which is simply concentrated water, so mental and emotional energy patterns become fixed when they encounter concentrated consciousness. The very act of differentiating the amount of awareness focused on one particular object over any other creates clinging. And the result of clinging is that selective thoughts and emotions stay in one place long enough to become the building blocks of the psyche. Right? This is where we make everything solid, right? And this is the more that we create these solid things, we use them to create those walls, those barriers, right? Or those chains, right, Debbie? Okay. So, where did I leave off? Clinging is one of the most primal acts. Because some objects remain in the consciousness while others pass through, your sense of awareness relates more to them. You use them as fixed points to create a sense of orientation, relationship, and security in the midst of constant interchange. And this need for orientation extends to the outside world. Although you are clinging to inner objects, you use them to orient and relate yourself to the multitude of physical objects that come in through your senses. You then create thoughts that tie all the objects together, and you cling to the entire structure. You actually end up relating so strongly to this inner structure that you build your entire sense of self around it. Because you cling to it, it stays fixed, and because it stays fixed, you relate to it above all else. This is the birth of the psyche. In the midst of the expanse of the empty mind, by clinging to passing thought objects, you make an island apparent you make an island of apparent solidity. Once you have a thought that stays, you can rest your head on it. Then, as you cling to more and more thoughts, you build an inner structure for consciousness to focus on. The more consciousness narrows its focus onto the mental structure, the greater the tendency to utilize it to define the concept of self. Clinging creates the bricks and mortar with which we build a conceptual self. In the midst of vast inner space, using nothing but the vapor of thoughts, you created a structure of apparent solidity to rest upon, right? That house, like we just read about in the last chapter, right? The last house where we blocked out all the light. Same thing. Who are you that is lost and trying to build a concept of yourself in order to be found? This question represents the essence of spirituality. You will never find yourself in what you have built to define yourself. You're the one who's doing the building. You may assemble the most amazing collection of thoughts and emotions. You may build a truly beautiful, unbelievable, interesting, and dynamic structure. But obviously, it's not you. You are the one who did it. You are the one who was lost, scared, and confused because you focused your awareness away from your awareness of self. In this panic, in this lost state, you learned to cling and hold on to the thoughts and emotions that were passing before you. You used them to build a personality, a persona, a self-concept that would allow you to define yourself. Awareness rested itself on the objects it was aware of and called it home. Because you have this model of who you are, it is easier to know how to act, how to make decisions, and how to relate to the outside world. If you dare to look, you will see that you live your entire life based on the model you built around yourself. And it's kind of like, yes, right. So it's kind of like, we talk about the art of creation, right? But think about the analogy of being an artist, and you create a piece of art, right? So now you've created this piece of art, and you may say, oh my goodness, I poured my heart, my soul into this. This is totally who I am. This reflects me as an artist. And yeah, okay. Also, you are not the piece of art, right? The art is the piece of art, and you continue to be the artist. So for instance, if the piece of art is damaged or destroyed, you are not damaged or destroyed. It is simply the piece of artwork that has been damaged and destroyed. And so when we look at this, it's like we are the artist of our creation. When we think about, okay, so we are creating the art of our life, right? But let's say we're creating like these little paintings like this, right? And our dream is to paint the sides of buildings, right? Well, we have to let go of this as the construct of our art, right? And be willing to let go of that without fear of being gone as an artist. And even this analogy, because whatever we've defined of ourselves as artists becomes a construct. But I'm just using it as an example to see that we, the greater being, is creating, but the creations are not us. It's just something that we've created, which means that we can always create something new and greater and different. How cool is that? So let's get more specific. You try to hold a consistent set of thoughts and concepts in your mind, such as, I am a woman. Yes, even that is a thought or a concept held in your mind. You are holding on to that, are neither male nor female. You are the awareness who hears the thought and sees a woman's body in the mirror. But you cling tightly to these concepts. You think, I am a woman, I am of a certain age, and I believe in one philosophy versus another. You literally define yourself based on what you believe. I believe in God, or I don't believe in God. I believe in peace and nonviolence, or I believe in survival of the fittest. I believe in capitalism, or I believe in neo-socialism. You take a set of thoughts in the mind and you hold on to them. You make a highly complex relational structure out of them, and then present that package as who you are. But it is not who you are. It is just the thoughts you have pulled around yourself in an attempt to define yourself. You do this because you are lost inside. And I would wonder, is it really that we're lost inside, or that we've just forgotten? We've just forgotten about this magic of infinite being, right? Or this wonder of the infinite, or that we have access to it, right? So basically, you attempt to create a sense of stability and steadiness inside. This generates a false but welcome sense of security. You also want the people around you to have done the same thing. You want people to be steady enough so that you can predict their behavior. If they aren't, it disturbs you. This is because you have made your predictions of their behavior part of your inner model. This protective shield of beliefs and concepts regarding the outside world acts as insulation between you and the people you interact with. By having preconceived notions about other people's behavior, you feel safer and more in control. Imagine the fear you would feel if you let the entire wall down. Who have you ever allowed directly into your true inner self without the protection of your mental buffer? Nobody, not even yourself. People just put facades out there. They even admit that one facade is a little more real than the other, right? Like, how many layers of facades? Like, we have the facade that we think is really us, and then like there's the facade that we show our inner circle, and the facade that we show the greater circle, and then the facade that's out in the world, right? Like, it's like the Russian nesting dolls, right? But who's actually in there? Yeah, let's tap more into that. You go to work and get lost in your professional facade, but then you say, I'm going home to be with my family and friends where I can just be myself. So your work facade drops into the background, and your relaxed social facade comes forward. But what about you, the one who is holding the facade together? Nobody gets near that one. That's just too scary. That one is too far back there to deal with. And that's what's so interesting. It's like we don't even want to look at it. Like, it's too scary to really even know what's there. And yet, what if, right? The story in the last chapter about being locked in this dark house with the light outside and too afraid to open the door and go outside and stand in the sunshine. Like, what if that is actually what's in there? In that core of ourselves that we're, for some reason, not fully wanting to explore or engage with or look at or embrace even. So we are all clinging and then building. Some of us are better at this than others. In most societies, you are well rewarded for how good you are at clinging and building. If you get that model down absolutely right and behave consistently every time, you have actually created someone. And if the someone you create is what others want and need, you can be very popular and successful. You are that person. It got ingrained in you at a very young age, and you never deviated from it. You can get really good at this game of creating someone. And if the person you created is not receiving the popularity and success you expected, you can adjust your thoughts accordingly. It's not that there is anything wrong with this. Obviously, everybody does it. But who are you that's doing this? And why are you doing it? Those are really the questions. You can do it. You can create any facade. You can be anything. You can create whatever person you want to be. The question is, do you know the being that is the creator? Are you willing to actually function and create from that space? Kind of exciting. It's important to realize that it's not just up to you what thoughts you cling to and what person you create. Society has a lot to say about this. There are acceptable and unacceptable social behaviors for almost everything. How to sit, how to walk, how to speak, how to dress, and how to feel about things. How does our society ingrain these mental and emotional structures within us? When you do it well, you are rewarded with hugs and showered with positive accolades. When you don't do it well, you are punished either physically, mentally, or emotionally. Just think about how nice you are to people when they believe in accordance with your expectations. Now think about how you close up and pull back from them when they don't. This is not to mention getting angry or even violent towards them. What are you doing? You're trying to change someone's behavior by leaving impressions on their mind. You are attempting to alter their collection of beliefs, thoughts, and emotions so that the next time they act, it is in the manner you expect. In truth, we are all doing this to each other every day. I was just thinking about a conversation with someone. We were talking about, we're all crazy. You just have to find people that are the same brand of crazy as you are, and then everything works. That's something to look at, right? Cool. So, hi, welcome. So, we are reading from the Untethered Soul, and we're just wrapping up the end of chapter 14, which is the third chapter in part 4 of the book, and written by Michael Singer. So, welcome to the rest of the reading. Why do we let this happen to us? Why do we care so much whether other people accept the facade we put out there? It all comes down to understanding why we are clinging to our self-concept. If you stop clinging, you will see why the tendency to cling was there. If you let go of your facade and don't try to trade it for a new one, your thoughts and emotions will become unanchored and begin passing through you. It will be a very scary experience. You will feel panic deep inside, and you will be unstable to get your bearings, or unable to get your bearings, which could be unstable. This is what people feel when something very important outside does not fit in their inner world. The facade ceases to work and begins to crumble. When it can no longer protect you, you experience great fear and panic. However, you'll find that if you're willing to face that sense of panic, there is a way to go past it. You can go further back into the consciousness that is experiencing it, and the panic will stop. Then there will be a great peace, like nothing you've ever felt. That's the part very few people come to know, that it can stop. The noise, the fear, the confusion, the constant changing of these inner energies, it can all stop. You thought you had to protect yourself, so you grabbed onto the things that were coming at you and used them to hide. You took what you could get your hands on, and you started to cling in order to build solidity. But you can let go of what you're clinging to and not play this game. You just have to take the risk of letting it all go and daring to face the fear that was driving you. Then you can pass through that part of you and it will be over. It will stop. No more struggling, just peace. This journey is one of passing through exactly where you have been struggling not to go. As you pass through that state of turmoil, the consciousness itself is your only repose. You will just be aware that tremendous changes are taking place. You will be aware that there is no solidity, and you will become comfortable with that. You will be aware that each moment of each day is unfolding, and you neither have control nor crave it. You have no concepts, no hopes, no dreams, no beliefs, and no security. You are no longer building mental models of what's going on, but life is going on anyway. Sounds kind of scary, doesn't it? You are perfectly comfortable just being aware of it. Here comes this moment, then the next moment, and then the next. But that's really what has always happened. Moment after moment has been passing before your consciousness. The difference is that now you see it happening. You see that your emotions and your mind are reacting to these moments that are coming through, and you're doing nothing to stop it. You're doing nothing to control it. You're just letting life unfold both outside and inside of you. That sounds pretty amazing, doesn't it? Just to me anyway. If you take this journey, you will get to the state in which you see exactly how the unfolding moments bring up a sense of fear. From this place of clarity, you will be able to experience that powerful tendency to protect yourself. This tendency exists because you truly have no control, and that is not comfortable to you. But if you really want to break through, you have to be willing to just watch the fear without protecting yourself from it. You must be willing to see that this need to protect yourself is where the entire personality comes from. It was created by building a mental and emotional structure to get away from the sense of fear. You are now standing face to face with the root of the psyche. Right? So it's that freedom that exists beyond, and that's actually where the choice and the actual creation exists and is possible beyond anything that we ever thought possible. If you go deep enough, you can watch the psyche being built. You will see that you are in the middle of nowhere in empty infinite space, and all of these inner objects are flowing toward you. Thoughts, feelings, and the impressions of worldly experiences are all pouring into your consciousness. You will clearly see that the tendency is to protect yourself from this flow by bringing it under your control. There is an overwhelmingly strong tendency to lean forward and grab onto selective impressions of people, places, and things as they flow by. You will see that if you focus on these mental images, they become part of a complex structure where there was none. You will see events that took place when you were 10 years old that you're still holding on to. You will see that you're literally taking all your memories, pulling them together in an orderly fashion, and saying that's who you are. But you are not the event. You're the one who experienced the events. How can you define yourself as the things that happened to you? You were aware of your existence before they happened. You are the one who is in there doing all of this, seeing all of this, and experiencing all of this. You do not have to cling to your experiences in the name of building yourself. This is a false self that you are building inside. It is just a concept of yourself that you hide behind. How long have you been hiding in there, struggling to keep it all together? Anytime anything goes wrong in the protective model you built about yourself, you defend and rationalize in order to get it back together. Your mind does not stop struggling until you've processed the event or somehow made it go away. People feel their very existence is at stake, and they will fight and argue until they get control back. This is all because we have attempted to build solidity where there is none. Now we have to fight to keep it together. The problem is there's no way out that way. There's no peace and there's no winning in that struggle. You were told not to build your house upon sand. Well, this is the ultimate sand. In fact, you built your house in empty space. If you continue to cling to what you built, you will have to continually and perpetually defend yourself. You will have to keep everybody and everything straight in order to reconcile your conceptual model with reality. It's a constant struggle to keep it together. What it means to live spiritually is to not participate in this struggle. It means that the events that happen in the moment belong to the moment. They don't belong to you. They have nothing to do with you. You must stop defining yourself in relationship to them and just let them come and go. Don't allow events to leave impressions inside of you. If you find yourself thinking about them later on, just let go. If an event happens that doesn't fit your conceptual model and you see yourself struggling and rationalizing to make it fit, just notice what you're doing. An event in the universe didn't match your model, and it's causing disturbance inside of you. If you will simply notice this, you will find that it is actually breaking up your model. You'll get to the point where you like this because you don't want to keep your model. You'll define this as good because you're no longer willing to put any energy into building and solidifying your facade. Instead, you will actually permit the things that disturb your model to act as the dynamite to break it up and free you. This is what it means to live spiritually, or from the source of spirit, from within. When you become truly spiritual, you are totally different from everybody else. That which everybody else wants, you don't want. That which everybody else resists, you totally accept. You want your model to break, and you honor the experiences when something happens that can cause disturbance within you. Why should anything that anyone says or does cause you to be disturbed? You're just on a planet spinning around the middle of absolutely nowhere. You came here to visit for a handful of years, and then you're going to leave. How can you live all stressed out over everything? Don't do it! Don't do it! If anything can cause disturbance inside of you, it means it hit your model. It means it hit the false part of you that you built in order to control your own definition of reality. But if that model is reality, why didn't experiential reality fit? There's nothing you can make up inside your mind that can ever be considered reality. You must learn to be comfortable with psychological disturbance. If your mind becomes hyperactive, just watch it. If your heart starts to heat up, let it go through what it must. Try to find the part of what that is. Try to find the part of you that is capable of noticing that your mind is hyperactive and that your heart is heating up. That part is your way out. There is no way out through building this model of yours. The only way to inner freedom is through the one who watches, the self. The self simply notices that the mind and emotions are unraveling and that nothing is struggling to hold them together. Of course, this will be painful. The reason you built the whole mental structure was to avoid pain, right? If everything is to stay comfortable, then inherently doing something to go beyond is going to be uncomfortable. So if you let it fall apart, you're going to feel the pain that you were avoiding when you built it. You must be willing to face this pain. If you were to unlock yourself in a fortress because you were afraid to come out, you would have to face that fear if you were ever wanting to experience a fuller existence. The fortress would not be protecting you. It would be imprisoning you. To be free to truly experience life, you must come out. You have to let go and pass through the cleansing process that frees you from your psyche. You do this simply by watching the psyche be the psyche. The way out is through awareness. Stop defining the disturbed mind as a negative experience. Just see if you can relax behind it. When your mind is disturbed, don't ask, "What do I do about this?" Instead ask, "Who am I that notices this?" In time, you will come to realize that the center from which you watch disturbances cannot be disturbed. If it appears disturbed, just notice who is noticing that disturbance. Eventually, it will stop. You will then be able to rest back into the depths of your being while watching your mind and heart create their last throes of turmoil. When you reach that point, you will understand what it means to be transcendent. Awareness transcends what it is aware of. It is as separate as light is from what it shines upon. You are consciousness, and you can free yourself from all of this by relaxing behind it. If you want permanent peace, permanent joy, and permanent happiness, you have to get through to the other side of the inner turmoil. You can experience a life in which waves of love can rush up inside of you anytime you want. It is the nature of your being. You simply have to go to the other side of the psyche. You do that by letting go of the tendency to cling. You do it by not using your mind to build false solidity. You just decide, once and for all, to take the journey by constantly letting go. At this point, the journey becomes very quick. You will go through the part of you that has always been scared to death, and you'll see how that part has always struggled to hold it all together. If you don't feed that part, if you just keep letting go and don't let it cling, eventually you will fall behind the false solidity. This is not something you do. It is something that happens to you. Or you choose it, and it's a new creation. That would be my point of view. Your only way out is the witness. Just keep letting go by being aware that you are aware. If you pass through a period of darkness or depression, just ask, who is aware of the darkness? That's how you pass through the different stages of your inner growth. You just keep letting go and remain aware that you are still there. When you've let go of the dark psyche and you've let go of the light psyche and you're no longer clinging to anything, you will reach a point where it will all open up behind you. Or just expand in all directions, infinitely, around and through you, and as you. You now become aware of a universe behind your seat of consciousness. Again, I would say that is everywhere, everything, oneness. It didn't look like there was anything behind you because you were so focused on building your model out of the thoughts and emotions passing before you. There was no awareness of the vast expanse of space inside. Back behind, there is a whole universe. You're just not looking that way. If you're willing to let go, you'll fall back and it will open into an ocean of energy. You will become filled with light. You will become filled with a light that has no darkness, with a peace that passes all understanding. You will then walk through every moment of your daily life with the flow of this inner force sustaining you, feeding you, and guiding you from deep within. You will still have thoughts, emotions, and self-concept floating around in inner space, but they will just be one small part of what you experience. You will not identify with anything outside the sense of self. Once you reach this state, you will never have to worry about anything ever again. The forces of creation will create creation, both inside and outside of you. You will float in peace and love and compassion beyond it all, yet honoring it all. There is no need for false solidity when you are at peace with the universal expanse of your true being. There is no need for false solidity when you are at peace with the universal expanse of your true being. Yes, I love all the hearts. Hearts from me as well. And that concludes the reading of all 3 chapters of part 4 of The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And next week we have part 5. And part 5 is Living Life. And there are actually several chapters in part 5. So I will be reading chapter 15, The Path of Unconditional Happiness, and chapter 16, The Spiritual Path of Nonresistance. So that will be next Friday. And keep an eye on Facebook to see when the live will be. If you'd like to come and enjoy the live reading, our story time together. I love having you guys on. Thank you so much. For anyone who is finding this recording and is curious about the first several chapters, you can go to the Art of Creation show. That's a YouTube channel, and look for the Season 7 playlist. And that Season 7 is all going to be readings from this book. So I invite you to that and to listen as often as you like. This is a book that I have read several times, and I will likely read many, many more times over the course of my lifetime. There seems to be a new gift every time I read it, and hopefully you'll find the same. So thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for subscribing to the Art of Creation Show YouTube channel. Thank you for liking the Art of Creation Show Facebook page and turning on all the notifications so that you know when to join us next. Have a wonderful week. Happy creating, and I wonder what we'll discover next. I'll see you next week, everyone. Bye-bye.